Contamination control is an obvious concern in drug manufacturing. I'm joined by Alan Fisher, Contamination Control Specialist with Dycem. Alan, how is risk management applied to contamination control for pharmaceutical manufacturing? How is risk measured?
Well, good day, Rita, and thanks very much indeed for the question. The situation is that over the years, contamination has become a very, very serious issue in all sorts of pharmaceutical manufacturing, particularly over the last few years with different products being manufactured in the same facility. But particularly, we have a situation with contamination control now being recognized by everybody to the degree where there is a sort of a placebo effect whereby they know they have to contain contamination and they think they're doing it and everything is fine. Consequently, a risk management policy, if applied to contamination and contamination control, is obviously a good way forward for everyone's benefit, which basically in any risk management policy would revolve around good scientific assessment and judgment, etc. So over a period of time, it would come into toxicity, the qualities of the various batches, all the very process time, the equipment being used, etc. And so a risk management policy applied to contamination over this period would be the best way forward. How is that risk measured? All contamination has a risk assessment associated with it. And so basically what you would attempt to do is try to establish what is likely to happen if there were mix-ups or if there was some sort of retention of powders or the actual chemicals themselves, or whether there was a transfer, whether that transfer was mechanical or if it was airborne. Risk is measured basically by taking the likelihood, i.e., is it going to actually happen? Is it likely? Is it possible? Is it unlikely? Or whatever, multiplied by the consequences. And most people carrying out a risk assessment policy will try to put some sort of value on the actual risk itself. So if it's a severe risk, they might give it a 6, and if it was a very, very low risk, they might give it a 1. And over a period of time, by using mathematical calculations, would help them to assess where the biggest risks are.
Thank you. What standards or practices guide facility operators in developing risk management strategies?
Over a period of years, as we know, more and more regulations have come into the application and the actual manufacturing of pharmaceutical products, all geared around, and rightly so, the quality of the medicines and the quality of the drugs actually being produced by these manufacturers, particularly when you consider the whole importance of safety of patients and what is likely to happen in the event of anything going seriously wrong. Because, regrettably, the end result, if anything does go seriously wrong, could result in a death of a patient, which is quite the opposite to what the whole pharmaceutical industry was set up about. So it concerns itself, and the regulations relating to it concern with quality, with safety, what everybody refers to as good manufacturing practices, GMP, managing for continuous improvement. But I try to sum it all up, and I know this is a very English sort of term, but hey, just do it right. Just get it right, and nothing more than that. And how you get it right, working within your risk management and risk assessments, is a matter for you, but effectively it is so essential that you have good practices, whether those practices are laboratory, whether they're clinical, whether they're regulatory, whether they're distribution, because when you take it all into account, Rita, you've got a situation whereby pharmaceutical operations are very, very highly complex, and so is the governance and the regulation that's associated with it. And so effectively, unless you play by the rules, and I use the word very carefully, you can end up with a situation whereby you have a very severe problem, and the end result, of course, could be the end of a facility, the end of jobs, and, as I said, the worrying factor, drugs or medicines being released into the environment which could do serious harm to the patients taking them.
Now, facilities, particularly contract manufacturing operations, may produce multiple products in the same environment. What special risks do these facilities face, and what are mitigation strategies?
Well, it's quite interesting, and I've been speaking a lot about risk in this interview, and thanks very much indeed for this particular question, because the situation is changing, and it's constantly changing in all markets across the world, but particularly in the pharmaceutical marketplace itself. I will say that risk sometimes can be perhaps a much maligned or an abused word, and effectively. But in the situation where you have now multiple products being produced by a number of different facilities, and within that they're using similar equipment, then it creates problems of its own. Effectively, what we're saying is that we don't actually know what is going on. I think microbiology in itself knows that there are limitations with the testing and limitations with the equipment that we use at the current time. And add that to the fact that we're producing, through nanotechnology, more and more specialized, highly toxic compounds which require toxicity checks, etc., added to the fact that cleaning of the materials combined with the actual drugs themselves and the hazards that those drugs present, that you can end up with two very, very benign substances that, combined with the cleaning residue that has been left in a piece of equipment, meaning that you end up with a very, very toxic substance that could actually might kill an individual. And that, of course, is very, very, very serious indeed. So the mitigation is that clearly if you carry out a proper risk assessment and actually analyze the equipment that you're using, the compounds themselves, and how any cleaning of the equipment in which multi-products may be produced to ensure that no residues are left behind. It really is elevating cleaning to a whole new standard. And particularly, it's better if you can actually have an effective risk management policy or strategy, which means effectively that you are reducing the operations risk of anything going wrong. So prevention is so much better than cure, because if you can prevent anything from going wrong, it's far better than having to deal with the consequences, which can involve regulatory withdrawal of licenses, regulatory closure of plants, loss of jobs, etc., end of organizations. So consequently, it's very, very important that everything is done to actually ensure that the manufacturing is done in a safe environment, and that risk management is applied to contamination control to ensure all pharmaceutical manufacturing is made without risk.
Thank you very much, Alan.
Thank you for the opportunity.